countless stories of, a mom opening it and crying because and then when reading it, so she opened it and just started crying because her son has been experimenting with, and feeling like he was a girl. And then, so she said she opened it, read the book and bawled before she showed it to her kids. And then reading it with them at story time, both her son, who is starting to realize he identifies as a female, and then her younger daughter. And to see that representation that's normal is, really, really heartening. And kind of brings me to my knees. And I think really among everything, if we can raise a generation of kids that loves themselves for exactly as they are, that's the whole point.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy. I'm your host, Jordan Murphy. And on this show, as you may or may not know, we have conversations about the defining moments that shape our lives. Before I start, just a blatant ask. If you're enjoying this podcast, and if you have shared it with friends and family, thank you so very much. If you've not, and you like this podcast, please consider grabbing the link, sharing it. The podcast is available on all the outlets you could probably think of. So if you have an Android or a iPhone, it doesn't matter. You can find it. It's on Spotify. It's on TuneIn. It's on iHeartRadio. It's on, of course, iTunes and others. So please share if you're enjoying what you're listening to, because, that's how these things get spread. It's word of mouth. All right. Enough with the shameless request. Also, don't forget, we do have the show sponsored by Amazon Fresh and Audible.com. The Amazon Fresh is super cool, very convenient. Don't know if you've actually used it before. You go online, you order your groceries. If you go through my website, you'll get $25 off your first purchase online. The Audible, you get 2 free downloads. Go to my website, breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com. These are limited time offers. They will probably be expiring in December, so get them while they're hot. I will have some new ones in the new year. Thank you all for listening to and for sharing my podcast. We've got 16 in the can so far, many more to come. Very excited about that. And if you have a great story, everybody has a great story. Everybody has breakthroughs in their lives. But if you want to share it, please go to my website and do that. Send me an email, just an abbreviated version of your breakthrough, and I'll sift through them, and maybe I'll give you a call and maybe you'll be on the show. I don't know. We'll play it by ear. So today on my show is a very interesting guest. Her name is Brittany Murlas. She's a growth marketer, and she specializes in tech targeting women and families. Now, Brittany recently was the CMO of Babylist.com, growing that company to the 3rd most popular baby registry, and now is working on her very own enterprise, littlefeminist.com. Now, we're going to get into littlefeminist.com on the show today because it's an interesting topic. So, Brittany, welcome.
Hi.
Well, happy New Year to all our Jewish friends, right? You don't happen to be Jewish, do you?
No, my husband is.
Is
and he yes.
Is he practicing?
No, I have to remind him when Rosh Hashanah is.
That's fantastic. Okay, funny story, right? So the whole 23andMe, right? The DNA thingy. Okay. So my wife recently, now my wife is white with a side of white. That's basically her heritage.
Right.
And so really not a surprise, okay, so she's French and she's Scottish and she's English and, so surprise, surprise, right? The crazy part of it was that recently the test came back and she learned that she is 23% Ashkenazi Jew.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's like a quarter Jew. And she was ecstatic.
She was something interesting.
She was so excited. I mean, she's like, I knew I was Jewish. And she told her friends, and her friends was, I always knew you were Jewish. I mean, it was extraordinary, the response to the news. So anyway, so I am newly indoctrinated into the whole notion of, being able to, I'm not Jewish, but now my wife is. So, and she doesn't practice. It doesn't really matter, but she likes it. She's happy about it.
I would be very happy about that too.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, for whatever reason, she's excited. So, now you're we have something in common. You're from Northern California, right?
Yes.
Were you born and raised?
No, my family moved to Berkeley when I was 15. So I actually grew up in the Chicago area.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm feel like I'm from the East Bay now. Oakland is home.
Yeah.
And I'm not leaving until I would leave only kicking and screaming.
Well, you know, I grew up there, and so that's where we have something in common. I actually grew up there from 5 until I left after college. And I grew up in the East Bay, Oakland, Piedmont Hills area. So, you know, close to you, I guess. Yep. You know, Montclair Village, that.
Yep. Yeah. We're in North Oakland, and I went to Berkeley High. And, so we played your high school, the sports with Piedmont High. Yep.
Well, I didn't go to Piedmont High. I went
where'd you go?
I went to St. Ignatius. It was, it used to be an all boys prep school in San Francisco. Now it's co-ed.
Yeah.
But yeah, my parents decided we're going to send you an hour and a half commute each way.
Yeah, that's real.
To school.
That's a real commute. Yeah.
It was no joke. And I think about it now. I have a 13-year-old boy and 10-year-old girls. And the idea of sending my son for an hour and a half freshman year to school by himself, I don't know if we're like more wimps now being parents. I don't know. But I mean, my parents literally 6:30 in the morning, I was down in a commuter line with a bunch of other adults going to work, sharing rides.
Did you take the bus, or you're talking about casual carpool?
Casual carpool. I would jump into a line and sit into a car with a complete stranger and another stranger, and we'd drive across the bridge. I would get dropped off at the AC Transit terminal right on the other side of the bridge, right? And then I would jump on Muni and take that all the way out to the ocean, which is where SI is.
Yeah.
And by myself. I mean,
holy moly.
Yeah. I grew up fast, Brittany, on the streets.
On casual carpool.
Yeah,
that's fascinating, because you would have done that, 4 years? I mean, casual carpool as from 14 to 18 every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every day. And, there came a point where obviously I had a car, or, I was driving with other guys who were older, so it ultimately worked out to a certain degree, but it was an interesting adjustment to just go from, I went to a grammar school that had K through 8, and it was a building, a hallway, and it was down one hallway was 1, 2, 3, 4. The other hallway door, 5, 6, 7, 8. That was it. It was one class per grade, 8 grades. That was it. And then throw you off into, high school in San Francisco, solo to like over 1,000 kids. It was an interesting change, but it was fantastic. It was a great, great, great experience. But anyway, so you went to Berkeley High, and
I did.
So how do you think, I have my own point of view on this, and you said you would not leave Northern California. And I get it, because having grown up there and moving away from there, traveling the world, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I look back on it and I'm like, oh my God, I was so spoiled to grow up there, to live there, and to see the rest of the world. Like, it's such a wonderful place to live, especially, San Francisco now is so crazy and overrun, cost of living and just
it's sad. And
it's a bummer. Yeah. It's not what it was when you and I were kids.
Right.
And, now what is it about Northern California that's so appealing to you?
That's a great question. Yeah, it is hard. It's heartbreaking, actually. And it's not just San Francisco, right? It's a lot of cities are dealing with this, and the tech boom, like the Facebooks and the Googles, are changing the city so that it's rare if we go out to a bar that I'll meet somebody from the Bay, whereas that wasn't so rare 10 years ago.
Right. What
do I love? There's an outdoor culture, obviously, same with LA, because every day is, 90% of days are gorgeous. And actually, if you talk to somebody in Chicago and we're comparing it, 100% of the days would be gorgeous. We get a little fog and we're like, this is horrible.
Right.
And I think...
And especially on the East Bay, because we actually get even better weather on the East Bay than they do in San Francisco.
Right. It's like 10 degrees. It feels 10 degrees warmer all the time.
Yeah. It's like,
what else would I say?
It's like the Valley and Santa Monica for us in LA.
Yeah. And Oakland right now, too, just feels really rich with like cultures and perspectives. And yes, sometimes it's a liberal bubble I was just at the Oakland Pride Parade yesterday, actually, which was amazing. And I have some good stories from Oakland Pride yesterday. And to be like totally honest, this is where my family is. My mom and my brother live here.
Yeah.
And so this is an amazing place to call home. And we've thought like, oh, maybe we would end up somewhere else. And we've lived abroad and traveled the country. And turns out this was our favorite. And family really makes a home.
Absolutely. And, I was going to also just throw in there, and this is kind of, you somewhat answered it, but, growing up in Northern California, specifically the East Bay, Berkeley, that area, how do you think it influenced you? Your views, your values, your politics, because you were there when you were 15 years old. So you did grow up in it, and it shapes us, whether we like it or not.
Right. Yeah,
how do you think it shaped you?
Great question. And then I loved Berkeley so much, I didn't want to leave. So I went up the street for college. So
that's right. You went to Cal.
I've been in the East Bay for a long time. How did it shape me? And this is true in Chicago too, but I was not in the majority and being white. That was the biggest thing. And so I remember actually playing basketball and playing other high schools, and all the other high schools we played were either all Asian, all white, or all black. And we were the team that was a mix of, that was four black players, 3 white, 3 Asian, and we were the only team I remember for my whole time playing that had that mix. And so that was the biggest thing that I got in the East Bay is just, it normalized difference, and that I didn't feel in a majority.
Yeah. No, I had a similar experience, and talking about the fact that I commuted to San Francisco. If I had not, I think, commuted to San Francisco or stayed in Piedmont, I would have had a very different experience. Cause as you know, Piedmont is pretty darn white.
Right.
At least it was. And when I started going to high school in San Francisco and traveling specifically, public transportation, it wasn't, I wouldn't call it even an eye-opening experience. I wasn't like, oh my God, there's black people or there's Asian people. It just was. It was like, this is the world. This is the world as it is. There's Asian people, Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, African-American. I mean, it was, you name it. And then it was also the whole notion of gay and straight and religion. I mean, there was no division. And that I think fortunately, it happened at such an early age. It wasn't like a surprise to me by any means. It was, oh, this is what's so. I mean, I look at some people who never have that kind of blend of races and creeds and sexual orientations until much later. And I think it's a huge impact on how people think.
Yep.
How people create their beliefs and their values and their politics. And the West Coast, call us what you will, there's an openness to considering. And I think that's what we have such a big problem right now in our country is this huge divide we have, this need to separate and, out of anger and fear. And I think that, again, call us the liberal elite or whatever the hell they want to call us. At the end of the day, I think we ultimately have to stop calling each other names and start having some conversations and staying open. And so specifically now, let's talk a little bit about your company, your latest venture, littlefeminist.com, talk about, creating a polarizing conversation, right?
Yep.
Let's segue right into that. And, so littlefeminist.com, tell me how it came about.
Good question. So I was the CMO at babyless.com, which is a universal registry. And I noticed that books broke a lot of rules. So, a lot of parents are getting more and more minimal in their kind of practices and wanting fewer things around their house, and books break that rule. There's folks for the most part were saying that they could never have too many books, and folks love gifting books. I'm also a huge fan of children's books, and I'm still a huge picture book reader, I think because of some dyslexia that I have. They've always been a place of solace for me. So I wanted to do something with children's books and always wanted to start my own thing, having seen and been part of growing babylist.com. And I started with the idea that it's really hard. Amazon is amazing, best place to buy books. And it's hard to find sometimes what you're looking for if you're trying to curate great books for your kids.
Right.
So I started with a company idea that was kind of like a Stitch Fix or like a personalized book service where we would pick the best books for your kid based on their age and interest, and did a pilot, and it totally failed. Then there's lots of reasons that it did, but one of the things that became clear in that pilot was how little diversity there is in children's literature. It's very white and very male, like a lot of other industries in the world. So it really shouldn't have come as a surprise, and it still did. And one of the reasons I learned that so quickly is in this pilot that I did, I had kind of I'd emailed my closest, 100 friends and family and said, hey, please share this. And so the folks that were in this pilot, so my friends and family, it's a very diverse group. And the folks that had signed up were, second degree connections of my already diverse family. So there's a wide range of folks in the pilot, probably majority not white. And I was, I made it seem like the website was doing the like automatic generation of great book picks for the kids, but it was actually me doing work behind the scenes, doing that research. Yeah, exactly. Making it seem like it was tech, but it was actually a human. And it was impossible. I had, my best friend had signed up for her 7-year-old.
So somebody comes in and says, okay, I have a 10-year-old girl and she likes soccer and she likes art, and can you find her a book? And now you scour the internet for that particular book that targets that person.
Yes, okay, exactly. And great summary. So a lot of the folks in the pilot not being white, I started hitting roadblocks with every single order when every month their box was just filled with more white kids and a lot of white males. Or if there was an animal book, it was a male. And so it was an organic realization that shouldn't have surprised me. And it did, because I was sending, friends, and friends of friends who I knew were not white, books that didn't represent their family. And so this pilot had kind of failed. And I came back to the idea of this new knowing that, wow, this industry is so far from representative of our country. And so I put up a bunch of tests. So I needed and wanted to find a new business idea. I still wasn't really making any money and wanted to start a company. And so I tested a lot of different ideas, did user tests, focus groups. And what came out of that was folks really wanted a feminist book club for kids. And I had all sorts of feelings about that, a lot of fear. One of the reasons that it tested so well is when I do tests on Facebook, folks I would put up like an ad that says a feminist book club for kids, and I'd do many other tests and watch who clicked and then gave me their email to say, like, do you want to be part of the, pilot program? And I got so many more emails for a feminist book club for kids. And one of the reasons was there was negative comments in the ads about how, feminism is cancer. Yeah. These are just, feminazis who are going to try to take everything away from men. Nobody's safe. And so that type of that discourse actually created amazing action. And it was very uncomfortable for me because I was raised to please everybody and not rock the boat. And here a company kind of landed at my feet that, was uncomfortable for me and for others, but in a really amazing way. It was just every day is a new, we piss people off. Yeah. That's new for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was reading an article you wrote on Medium, and you had said that and at the end of last year, children's books published each year, just 31% have female central characters. And in the last 5 years, only 13% of children's books feature a person of color. When you see the numbers like that, it's I don't know, sad, daunting. We don't taken into consideration, obviously, because we're white folks. So it doesn't even cross our radar until it's brought to our attention. And it's great because it should be brought to our attention that these books aren't available out there. I mean, thank God there has been somewhat of a resurgence of people of color and females showing up more in content on TV and in movies. You know, there's been a shift. But like we were talking the other day about these books, there's a reproduction of this problem, because you look at the Bernstein Bears, you know, it's like when we were kids, we were read books by our parents, and then we read books to our children, and so on and so on and so on. You just kind of push it along. And so it's kind of going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy until something like this and others, I'm sure, step in and scratch the record a little bit.
Right.
So feminism, you know, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because it's obviously polarizing. And I think that it's worth saying that, defined by Merriam-Webster, the word feminism is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Now, it says equality of the sexes. It's easy, I think, for people to become, what's the word I'm looking for? Feeling like there's this radicalization of, you know, females are better than men, down with men. And there's fanatical factions of every movement, but it doesn't necessarily mean that at the core of it, feminism, as far as I understand it, is equality for all.
Right.
That's it. Doesn't need to get much more complex than that. So it's interesting to talk to, whether it's world leaders or celebrities or somebody at a dinner party. You ask them if they're a feminist, and there's usually a hell yes I am, or a I don't know, because there's this concern of being ostracized or confronted because of that label. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's every day. I live that every day. So yesterday at the Pride Parade, we were tabling with the Oakland Tourism Board. They invited us to come table with them, which was amazing. They wanted to feature local businesses, which was great. And so we were giving out buttons that say "Little Feminist" on them to kids and folks who kind of stopped and were looking at our booth. And one man I noticed had walked by and was kind of glaring, and he was like, you know, covered in rainbow beads, right? And so I said, "Hey, would you like a button?" And he said, "Actually, I'm in the camp of feminism is cancer." And I'd kind of misheard him. And I said, like, we were at the Pride Parade. And so my assumption was like, you know, everybody there would be for it. And he explained that he thought feminists were down for everybody but women. And I explained that we believe that in the definition from Merriam-Webster is that we say all genders, because I think we're going to be living in a world where gender is not binary in the future. Certainly there's a lot of kids who fall into that category now, which is a whole nother interesting conversation. And he just simply disagreed, because feminism I don't disagree that feminism has come to mean much more than the dictionary definition. I don't disagree with that. What we want to challenge is why and how come we can't use the word feminist. Like, if we do believe in the equality of sexes and genders, why can't we all be feminists, basically? And when did this word get co-opted?
Right. And I think that what's interesting to explore also is that words are powerful, right? So, no matter how you slice it, I guess we can agree or disagree that feminism is whatever it is. However, I think what we can agree is that feminism has become an inflammatory term and a misinterpreted term. And is it and its inflammatory nature, its polarizing nature, getting in the way of the actual point?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, do we have to fight for the word feminism, or can we create something new that is humanism? I mean, there's different words that you hear thrown around. I mean, because like you're saying, it's not that gender is no longer going to be binary. That we're going to have to create a new paradigm. Right. And ultimately, the word feminism may soften at some point, but who knows? I mean, it's got decades of heat behind it. But how is there a possibility of creating a word, or is there a word that's already that I'm missing that I'm not aware of? I'm just throwing it out there.
It's a good question. One thing I can say is that there was a number, and this is again from my experience yesterday, so many young adults. So these are like kind of preteens. So any from 7 to 20 who came up and said, I'm a feminist. This is so exciting. I might have gotten more attention from the younger generation than I did older. The other thing I'll say is that there's actually how the word feminism is defined or interpreted is different for every age range. So, completely. And I can actually show, like, I have real data on this from Facebook. When we run Facebook ads.
The Gloria Steinem era, or the suffragette era, or, all these different periods.
Yeah. Yeah. So, 60 plus year olds are all about it. Early 30s down are all into it. And there is a period, and I'm not kind of positive on all the ages, but it's kind of maybe like 40, 45 to like 55-ish that are not, that it means something very different. And I get that we might not be able to change that. And we're standing for the coming generation that like is all kinds of genders and the belief that they are all equal.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said too you're in Hollywood, let's talk about the representation of diversity in TV and movies, right? Like at some point there has to be a stand for diversity rather than just
talking about
humanism, because there is a problem. The representation is a problem. So let's call that out and then work from there. And let's not say that down with white people and males in order to get there. It's calling out the problem and working towards more representation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now, when you started, like you said, at first, it was a little scary because you were kind of stepping into a zone that was not comfortable, and you were getting flack online, haters, trolls, people, sharing their beliefs, and that was unsettling and uncomfortable for you. And here you are, throwing these lines in the water to see what bites. And you mentioned to me when we talked the other day that you got feedback from people who were close to you, friends, family, mentors, to stay away.
Yep.
And I gotta ask, being someone who believes in surrounding yourself with people who support you and love you and want the best for you, right? What was that like?
Yep.
To have your inner circle say, stop.
Yeah. Right. I'm living up to my last name right now, which is, this is a little bit of craziness. We talked about earlier how my last name means crazy, in Greek.
Right.
So yeah, so all these tests and feedback were coming back when folks were craving and hungry for a book club for kids that featured strong female characters and people of color. So I tested like a diversity book club for kids too, and there simply wasn't the same interest. And I will say, definitely the election, I was running these tests a few months after the election. And so that's, of course, this is the time we're in, and this is important now. And we wanted to, give the people what they wanted. So I went to my kind of mentors that I've had, in the business and tech world. And yes, all of them said, this is polarizing. You're going to pigeonhole yourself. Don't use the word. Folks will assume it's a product that's only for girls and things of this nature. And so I spent about a month just like kind of sitting in inaction and fear, because the data and people were telling me one thing, which is we want a feminist book club for kids. And my mentors were telling me the other. And the kind of example from, my friends in the business world was like, well, sure, use it as a tagline, but pick a different name.
Right.
It was through.
What was their reasoning? I mean, data is one thing, right? You look at the numbers, but give me an example of somebody's actual legitimate reason for saying, don't do it. You said being pigeonholed. I got that part, but what else?
One was, and this is real, but what's not actually as big of a deal as folks would think, is that folks immediately hear feminist and think it's a product for girls. And that is true. But again, within a certain demographic, younger folks, so 30% of our subscribers are subscribed for are families with boys who subscribe for their boys. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw that, so I think this goes back to like the generational understanding of a word. And again, talking about the Pride Parade yesterday, like queer is now like, it's a very different word than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 5 years ago, even. So what are some other reasons? Yeah. Polarizing political.
Isn't that kind of what you want in a product?
Yeah.
I mean, don't you want a kind of a lightning rod? I mean, especially in this world where there's so much information that you want something that pulls attention. That's the whole point. That's search engine optimization. Yeah. Search engine optimization, keywords. I mean, it's like, boom. I mean, it's like, how do I get more people to find my site? Put a big fat red button on it.
Right. Well, we should have talked when I was kind of sitting in inaction for a month, not knowing what to do. Right. I think that the folks, position. That was not, the perspective was not rocking the boat. And I think that
but that's an issue for you. But that's an issue for you to actually confront. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You had to confront that as a person.
Yeah. For me, and to be honest, and I'll speak for the whole gender here, and I'm going to own that for all women. We're just now, this is the weekend after the Serena Williams
debacle.
What if we did take a stand and got people pissed off? Why not?
Right.
And these were all female mentors at the time who said, don't use the word. You don't want to get folks. Okay, most of them are. Yeah. I think all of them. And I think I probably went more to females at the time because this is a product that, 95% of the folks who are part of or who give us our credit card online are women. They're, they're the folks who decide to buy, I should say.
So it's obviously attracting what you thought it would attract, right?
Yes.
Which is females. No surprise.
Yep.
Now, at the core of it, though, the intention of the product is to bring a more diverse library of content to children.
Right. So we say diversify your bookshelf. If you want to be really left, decolonize your bookshelf. Yeah. But helping families. And I don't have data of race and ethnicity on our subscribers, but there's a lot. I don't know if it's majority. It might be of folks white families who know their bookshelf is white and they want to make it representative of the world. Or families will say like, well, we were in a diverse neighborhood and we just moved and we want our, and seeing and knowing that they want to represent the population of the world on their bookshelf.
So beyond diversifying the library, considering the term and its polarization and the fact that the possibility here is to change the conversation or to change the definition, is that at all a part of the mission?
Yes, 100%. So it's something that we do in practice. So when folks are, our last book was called Introducing Teddy. It's an amazing story about a teddy bear that's transgender. And it's a really sweet story. It's great for young kids too, to kind of help broach a pretty difficult or like hard conversation to know how to start. Mm-hmm. And so all our books don't always feature a strong female character. Another one of our favorite books that we sent as part of our book club is Jabari Jumps, which features a Black boy. The primary caregiver is his father, and they have this cool emotional connection in the book that helps give Jabari the courage that he needs to jump off the diving board. Mm-hmm. And with both the transgender teddy bear book and Jabari Jumps, folks were kind of immediately taken aback, like, oh, well, I thought, this was always strong female characters. And we always include a note on why we included that book. And 100% of the time when folks read that note, they get it, which is our definition of feminism is also intersectional. At intersectional feminism, we don't use a ton because it's pretty intellectual. Not everybody knows what it is, but the whole idea is that the equality of the genders has to be combined with the equality of all people too. And you can't just see it as in one silo. And so, yes, in practice, our book club is about diversifying all things through the lens of feminism and intersectional feminism, but it's not all women all the time. It's very much a mix, and the lens is
equality for all.
Yeah, if there is a book that, equality for all. And if there was a book that, like, for example, with Jabari Jumps, if like we maybe wouldn't have picked that book if the mother figure couldn't leave the house because she was so
right.
busy with chores that she couldn't, something like this.
Right.
And yeah.
So that's what I was going to ask you about that too, about the fact, how your message is delivered at that level, as far as like being at front facing, like on your website, there's no, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. It sounds like you're kind of wrapping it into, once they've been embraced and once they've engaged, then you send a note that highlights a little bit more of the definition.
Yeah, I think so. So we say what we believe in on the site, and there's only so much, been in, tech for a long time, and there's only so much people read on websites.
Right. Good point.
And so we do try to, we try to walk the walk, and the website is full.
Have you ever considered doing like a short commercial, like a short video that somebody could?
Yes, we're working on it now, actually.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we're working on, we're new, and we are working on how to tell that story succinctly and clearly. And folks know, the focus is all the books we feature have a strong female character and or a person of color and or another type of diversity. So right now we're looking for, my husband uses a wheelchair, and so I'm acutely aware of how few books there are that feature a character that has a different ability level. And so, we're looking for all types of books, and seeing some gaps that we hope to fill by publishing our own books in the next couple of years too.
I don't know if you've ever heard the book by Dan Rome, blah, blah,
Which
blah.
one?
It's called Blah, Blah, Blah. And it just because of what we're discussing right now, as far as how to present an idea, and considering how the internet is so text heavy, how do you get to your audience? How do you get to them effectively? And you kind of got to go back to cave painting. You got to go back to back to images. And we know, like, read, we like look. I mean, it's kind of, we like to see it, hear it, and especially to digest it quickly. And his book touches on that, the power of imagery to tell a story and to communicate an idea effectively. So it's great that you guys are working on that. Now, when you you're finding these books, when you said originally, when you were mining for them yourself, you were struggling. It's not like suddenly 1 million books got written.
Correct.
How are you suddenly finding books? Or are you finding authors who haven't been published? Or, what are you doing?
That's a great question. So one of the reasons it was a particular problem with the first company or the first pilot was it was different books for every age range. And so it was not just, part of it is with Little Feminist every month, we're picking 1 to 2 amazing books. And with the first version of the company, every kid was getting 3 to 4 books. And the product was more expensive. And so the sheer volume of books that we're looking for is a little bit less. And we're not looking for books for 10-year-olds and 4-year-olds and newborns. Our book club now is for 3 to 7-year-olds, and we'll be building that age range out soon, to over, 7 to 10-year-olds. And then there's been a huge ask for an, newborn to 2-year-old book club. So we are more focused. We're looking for amazing books in a more specific age range. So that helps. And we're looking for 1 to 2 a month, not 25 to 100 that I was doing before. So that's part of it. And a question that people will ask is like, are you going to run out at a certain point of books? There are more and more diverse books being published, not at the frequency which it could or should be, right? We can talk about like Black Panther was amazing this year, and like that's a win, and like let's make sure there's 3 more Black Panthers next year. And I should say too that one of our underlying goals, and this isn't something we talk about tons, is publishers say that diverse books aren't published because there's lack of demand. And we see the exact opposite. We're seeing huge demand when we call out that we help folks diversify their bookshelves with strong female characters and folks of color. And so our kind of one underlying goal in all of this is that when we come in and buy 2,000 copies of Jabari Jumps, that's a huge sign to publishers. One, it's awesome for the author. And it's a big sign to publishers that like, you need to keep doing this because folks, this is money. Black Panther does sell. So does Crazy Rich Asians, and not in a tokenizing way, Well, hopefully not in a tokenizing way. We're working on that too.
Right.
I'm not sure if I answered your original question.
Yeah. It's perfect. So just rewinding a little bit, just to maybe spotlight it, is as far as your breakthrough, as far as your, I guess, the birthing, if you will, of Little Feminist, you had to confront something for yourself in actually saying, yeah, I'm moving forward with this. Would that be what you would consider one of your recent breakthroughs?
Yeah, good question. So this came up in a big way in deciding to go forward with the name, right? Which was basically everybody's telling me not to. And like the world is presenting something different to me and over again. And people said, I would give money to a company called littlefeminist.com, but not another name, basically was what was happening. So having the courage, having a friend at that time told me that courage was being scared and doing it anyway. And I think I was thinking I could only do it if I wasn't going to be scared at all. And so that's been something, yes, that big decision happened, more than a year ago. And that was scary. And it presents itself every day. When something is scary and feels really uncomfortable, and I see it and I do it anyway. And I don't do it perfectly every day. I do it quite, it's a process every day. It doesn't always look super good. And it's things like that conversation yesterday when that guy came up and said he, thought that feminism was cancer. And was I open to his point of view? It happens when somebody wanted a return label for the book Introducing Teddy because they didn't want a book about a transgender teddy bear in their house. So this comes up for me every day. And what it is, again, and I'm not perfect at it, and I'm starting to recognize it better and better with time. I think a lot of women were brought up not to rock the boat, that my job was to be kind and make people feel comfortable and be helpful and be good, be a good daughter,
non-confrontational,
be a good partner. Yeah. And I just stepped into, and so this is what life brought me. And that was my breakthrough, over a year ago, choosing the name, but it also happens every day because we're making people uncomfortable. And when that parent asked for the return label to send, they didn't even want Introducing Teddy in their home, anything about being transgender or not wanting to be the gender that you were assigned at birth, that it was it made me really sad, and it made me really scared that we were pushing an agenda on folks that they didn't want or need. And what I kind of realized before going to bed that day is that if we're not pushing the envelope, then we're not doing our job. And that folks sign up for Little Feminist. And I ended up talking about what had happened on social media, and what was true is our community agreed with me, which is that they pay to be part of Little Feminist Book Club to help them push the envelope, specifically in their children's bookshelf, right? To push, rather than the books that they would normally go to and their kids would normally go to, that we help present books that they wouldn't necessarily go to, and stories and voices that aren't heard as often. And so it's scary every day. I'm terrified on an hourly basis, and this very much feels like my calling and a way to, like, the thing that I most need to be working on and challenging myself in life.
Yeah. And I think that to a certain degree, at least in my experience, my life experience, is that when things are when they push you off balance, when you feel fear like that, and I guess there's healthy fear. There's something to be said about, like you said, walking through something in the face of doubt from a place of faith, like saying, you know what, I'm doing this because it's what I'm here to do. And I can't explain exactly why. I can't even put words to it maybe, but it's what I'm here to do. And is it comfortable? No. Is it easy? No. But we don't do anything that's going to create a breakthrough on a large scale isn't going to be comfortable.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, ask any woman who gives birth.
Yeah. Right.
It's not comfortable. You know, struggle is necessary. I love that story about the caterpillar and the chrysalis becoming the butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard that story?
As like a metaphor or the specific story?
Well, there's the metaphor. Well, the story quote, metaphor, I guess, was that there was a caterpillar in the chrysalis struggling to get out of its cocoon, and the person was watching the cocoon and the little caterpillar struggling to get out of and become the butterfly, and was like pushing and struggling and trying to get out, and the person cut open the cocoon sac a bit to help the butterfly get out easier. And the butterfly got out, kind of fell out of the chrysalis, laid there on the ground, and ultimately died. Couldn't fly. Right. And because evidently, I didn't know this, but evidently the caterpillar, the butterfly, the process of it becoming a butterfly, it is imperative and necessary physically for the butterfly to struggle, to force its way out, to force blood into the veins that create the wings, that create the muscles, that create the power to lift itself off and fly.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And if you stop that struggle process, you're killing the butterfly.
Right.
And I'm totally probably messing up there's probably a better story than that. but the point of it though is what I get, which is struggle and overcoming adversity and fears is part of life.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. And I think of, and it makes me tear up, which like with the Introducing Teddy book that talked about the transgender teddy bear, that one parent didn't want it in their house and asked to return it in a full refund and canceled her subscription in our book club. And there were countless more stories. And it was easier for me to focus on the woman who hated it rather than the countless stories of, a mom opening it and crying because and then when reading it, so she opened it and just started crying because her son has been experimenting with, and feeling like he was a girl. And then, so she said she opened it, read the book and bawled before she showed it to her kids. And then reading it with them at story time, both her son, who is starting to kind of realize he identifies as a female, and then her younger daughter. And to see that representation that's normal is, really, really heartening and kind of brings me to my knees. And I think really among everything, if we can raise a generation of kids that loves themselves for exactly as they are, that's the whole point, I think.
No, that's incredible. I think that in your most concerned, scary moments, if you can remind yourself of those moments, when you've touched a person, when you've moved a family, that to a certain degree, that overshadows any fear, doubt, concern, that any fear, doubt, concern, or worry that you could possibly construe when you have that kind of experience for someone else. And that's just one person who you spoke to.
Right.
So that's really amazing. And that's the name of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the butterfly stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get to this point and you're like, how did I get here? How did I
all
become,
the time, man.
Right? I mean, it's like, did you ever think I'm going to have this book company online? I mean, it must have been out of left field.
Yeah. I even remember this. I even remember this experience in college when, I was like a freshman and with a good friend of mine, and he said, well, I'm a feminist. And I had said, oh, I don't know if I am because, I believe that race and income there are bigger disparities there than there are for gender. And so this has been, if I could go back to that, freshman year in college self and be like, guess what you're going to be doing in 20 years from now, I would be very surprised. And and there's a way, you had said that being uncomfortable, there's a way that sometimes the uncomfort is exactly what needs to happen. On a day-to-day basis, my job is kind of to do the thing that I'm most scared and least comfortable in doing. And, total surprise. This was not this was not planned at all. Folks will also often say, oh, what an amazing idea. How did you get the idea? And it was by listening to people. It wasn't my idea.
Usually the best ideas can come like that.
Yeah.
Is listening to each other.
Yeah.
So I wanted to change gears. You mentioned a couple things that I thought was interesting, because obviously what you're doing with your company, we could go on and on about. You mentioned something about, first of all, being dyslexic, which I think is always something to unpack in anybody's life. And you're married?
Yes.
And you have kids?
No, we don't have kids yet. We're just starting our IVF, our like fertility journey, because my husband uses a wheelchair, and we knew maybe like 3 or 4, we've been together for almost 10 years, and we knew,
so he's always been in a wheelchair
since I've known him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And we knew that because of his spinal cord injury, that, having kids for us was not going to be a natural process, and I don't want to say natural, because IVF seems to be even more natural than not these days. Yeah, that we were going to need help from a doctor to get pregnant, let's say. So I'm married. Actually, our 1-year wedding anniversary is coming up this weekend. It kind of came quickly.
What anniversary?
Our first wedding anniversary. We got married a year ago.
Oh my God.
Sunday.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've known each other for quite a while, but
yes,
just got married.
Yeah, it took me a while. There's another breakthrough. Being okay getting married was one of them for me. My parents were very unhappily married, and my mom, my brother, and I actually aren't in communication with my dad because of a lot of reasons. The main one being that it's not healthy for us to be in communication with my dad.
Right.
And so there was just a lot of fear for me of getting married, and what that meant, and why did we have to get married? Couldn't we just kind of keep doing what we were doing?
Well, it seems like you were doing a pretty good job at doing what you were doing. I mean, you were together for 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, right. So it was like, you were like, what's the difference? Why get married?
Yeah, exactly.
What,
yep.
I mean, so most of what was getting in the way of you getting married was all the conversations you had about marriage.
Yeah. And to me, there was this fear. So that my parents' divorce dragged out 8 years, not the divorce, I think, was quick itself, but the property settlement took forever, because my dad really likes being in court and suing people. And, so there really was just like a fear. Well, one, there's kind of always been this fear that I would somehow turn into my dad, or that my partner, husband Mickey, would turn into my dad. And just like a fear of like, why be legally tied to somebody if that could introduce a lot of strife going forward. That was always my argument. And really what it came down to is, I'm in this partnership. I love this person no matter what. And I don't want that to change. And it wasn't like a deal breaker for him, but he really wanted to get married. And I think when I recognized what my biggest fears around it were, and just kind of called them out and talked about them, it lessened them. And it's still scary. And then the other thing that somebody said to me was, and we didn't even have to legally gotten married, but there are 2 times in your life when all your friends and family get together, at your wedding and at your funeral. You're only there for one of them. And right. So our wedding, now a year ago, really was a celebration with people that normally wouldn't be in the same room together, which was really special.
Yeah. Yeah. Being, getting past the conversations that we have from the past, such that we can actually have a future.
Yep.
Is paramount, and I think oftentimes missed by us humans, because we live most of our lives out of our past. Most of us don't make our decisions based on the possibility of anything. It's usually rooted in, what is my relationship to money? What is my relationship to career? What is my relationship to relationship? Based on what I know, based on the past. And if you've got some baggage in the past that is limiting in any area, then that area is going to be limited.
Right.
Until you identify it. Like you said, you identified it, you looked at it, you shined a light on it, you brought it to the surface, you had a conversation, and oftentimes just that alone can disappear it. and it's not over. It's not done. It's not forgotten.
Right. Not at all.
But
right.
there's a witnessing of it. There's an observation of it where you can actually step outside of it, if that makes sense, and see yourself doing it and saying, how's that working out?
Right. Right.
How's that working out for me? Do I want to keep on going down that path, or do I want to take a new path?
Right.
And do I want to take a new path with this guy?
Right.
I mean, I had a similar experience. I mean, marriage was not on my radar screen. Not interested. Not that I had a horrible experience in my past, but I had a conversation about women and women being trusted. And as a result of that, I had a history of relationships that were, fine, but not particularly deep, And it wasn't until I identified that I was able to see that my wife is not the women from my past.
Yep.
She's my wife, and she's extraordinary. I'm going to step in because she's extraordinary, and I'm going to try on something new.
Yep.
And go for it. And, like you did with your marriage, like you're doing with your company.
Right.
Look at you. Look at you go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a daily reminder that Mickey, my husband, is not my dad, and I am not my dad.
That's
and
right.
It seems like it, rationally, sure, it's very true. And there's, some very early brain memories and knowings that very quickly, when he doesn't do the dishes, that, oh my God, I married my dad, what's going to happen type of fears come up. And recognizing those is half the battle, and the other, and recognizing those every day. And that's not, that's a story from inside my head that developed at a very early age, and that I can break that cycle. And you're right. There's so much of our past that we are doomed to repeat because we don't know any different.
We don't even know that we're doing it.
Right.
I think that's the biggest problem, is that we're blind to it.
Right.
And once we're blind to that fact, and it's not until we consider looking at it and saying, how's this working? Is it working? Is it working the way I want it to be working? If it's not, you got to look at it. You got to unpack it. You've got to explore it. And that's uncomfortable too, because it means you have to take responsibility. Like 100% responsibility, because it's much easier to say you're not married because you're dad.
Right.
I'm not in a fulfilling, connected relationship. And I'm not saying this is exactly what you were, but you could say I'm not succeeding financially in my career, or I'm not in a loving relationship because my parents did this, or because that guy did that. It's easier to blame people than it is to take a look and say, what am I doing? Because when it comes to having relationships that are not necessarily deep or intimate, who's the common denominator there?
Me, you,
right.
Anyone. Yeah. Right.
me,
right.
us. Yeah, exactly. If you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, you got to ask yourself, who's been there in every single circumstance. So, but that's scary. That's scary for people. Yeah. Would you say in the last 5 years, is there like a new belief or a behavior or a habit that you've taken on to improve your life, to navigate this thing called life?
That's a good question.
Like, what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah.
On a daily basis, do you have rituals or practice or, what do you do?
It's a great question. So something, this is in the last year though, not in the last 5, is every time I say I have to do something, so I have to take the garbage out, or I have to email this person back, or we have to go see family in San Francisco, re-saying that sentence with the word get to instead of have to.
That's great.
Has been really powerful, because it makes it a choice, because everything is right. But if I say we have to go to the city to see family, there's no gratitude and there's no choice in that, right? We get to go see family in San Francisco because they live close, because we have a car, because it's the weekend and we're not working. And so that's been one little, ritual that my husband and I have both been doing, which is amazing.
Well, yeah, you're changing, you're changing the language, and it's words, kind of going back to what we said earlier, just about words being powerful.
Right.
They're powerful. I mean, and the idea of changing one word changes it into a choice. And there's another one I've heard where you say, well, I'm overweight, but I have to eat healthy and exercise every day. Or I'm overweight and I get to work out every day and eat healthy.
Yeah, well said.
So changing the but into an and.
Right. Yeah.
Creating that choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get to start a company that gets people pissed, that is polarizing and starts a conversation. Or I get to have, yesterday I get to have a conversation with somebody who is in the, feminism is cancer sect. Yeah. And rather than I have to, it helps. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next? So the company's building,
mm-hmm.
company's growing. Is it growing at a rate that you're happy with, excited by?
Oh, good question. I think that similarly, there's, as I said, there's always every day, there's a new thing to face. And I've wanted to make sure that, and this is my own fears coming up,
mm-hmm.
that the people really liked our product. So we just launched in November. And so the last kind of, I guess, close to a year now has been making sure people really like the product before we spend a bunch of time blowing out marketing. And really, that's a fear conversation for me.
Right.
So we've been growing at a steady clip that I'm really happy with. And we want to be reaching more people. And some of the reason that I haven't done that yet is fear of failure. And so that's kind of a new realization on my part of doing it, even though I think at first there was doing it even though I'm scared of pissing people off. And now there's doing it even though I'm scared of failing is kind of a new one. And so this holiday season will be really big for us.
What does failing actually look like? Because sometimes we get caught in like failure and we don't even know what we're talking about. What it is.
Totally. That's such a good question. I mean, I quit my really awesome job at a company that was growing, that I had brought to an amazing mm-hmm. place and has, grown since because I wanted to try to make something happen on my own. And I've landed on an idea and a company that folks think is a really great idea. And so really the failure, if I'm not able to make Little Feminist work, I think the failure it'll be a sign that I don't know what I'm doing. And frankly, that I'm unworthy. And so I think, which if I don't try, that'll manifest itself anyway. If I'm scared of failing.
That's right.
And so,
isn't that weird how that works? You're literally afraid of being a failure and afraid of, people looking bad or looking stupid or and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like
exactly.
you're manifesting your fear by not taking action.
Exactly.
Isn't that crazy? We do that to each other, to ourselves.
Yeah. And it makes sense in our heads.
Completely. Because the ego doesn't want us to suffer.
Yeah.
The ego wants to protect us. It thinks and it creates stories and ideas that it seems to, all based on the past. And it's mm-hmm. gathering this intel and telling us, whoa, don't do that. Don't do that. Whoa, careful that,
Right.
And so we play it safe.
Right.
As to not repeat past problems or issues that caused this machine called us. Breakdowns.
Right. Yeah. Mickey's my husband and his mom had this. Yeah. Cause even when you do it, it doesn't mean it won't happen. She, when Mickey was injured, he got in a bicycle accident. That's why he uses a wheelchair from a spinal cord injury. And Mickey's mom had this realization that ever since that point, she's been kind of trying to control her family, to a point where doesn't have her relationships with her kids could be deeper than they are. And, she realized it was not wanting something bad to happen to her family again. And in the process, one, that doesn't, controlling your kids isn't actually going to keep that from happening. And you're now creating a life where you're not close with your kids, which is exactly what you're trying not to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I mean, cause that is one of those, God, please don't let this happen to my children conversations and it coming true that every parent can identify with.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to protect yourself, another thing to protect your children.
Mm-hmm.
So with his situation, I'm curious because you've been married as long as you guys have been married and he's been in a wheelchair. How has that been as far as the dynamic of the relationship? Because it's not quote unquote something you probably thought, hey, I'm going to go marry a guy who's in a wheelchair?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right. And it's not a bad thing at all. It's just not something, I mean, I have experiences in my past where I actually dated people who had, you know what, do I use the word disability? I don't know what the word is that I don't offend anybody.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. It's different for every person. Yeah.
But I, as far as I'm concerned, it's the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the chair. It's not the challenge that they're dealing with. But how have you guys navigated that? Or have you just been like, whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing to say is that, so we met because I played basketball all through school, and then I started coaching a kids wheelchair basketball team.
Okay.
And I was the assistant coach I coached the JV team and then was assistant coach on the varsity team. And so I met Mickey through that wheelchair sports program. He wasn't one of the players as a child. He was on the adult team. Right, People always think like, oh, you started dating one of the players. No, that's not what happened.
Robbing the cradle.
So I was kind of already in that world. And while I wasn't looking for it, you know, there was a way that in that world that was kind of normalized and everybody used it. I was the weird one for not using a chair. So I will say that like my first impression was formed there. So it wasn't really something I like focused on. It was just like, oh, wow, that guy on the adult team is really cute. So let's see, how has it been?
I mean, it has to be just a basic adjustment of lifestyle, period.
Yeah, although like for me, it's kind of normalized at this point because it's been a really long time, and I've had other relationships and this has been the longest one. There's things like we don't have carpets in our house because it really sucks to push a wheelchair over carpet type of thing. And sometimes I lament that, I'll never be a person with a very plush carpet in their bedroom.
If that's the worst you're confronting, you're doing okay.
Yeah. They're like, to be honest, more than the physical like manifestations of to be honest, there's not many ways our life is different. We don't go on hikes. Like us going on hikes isn't something that we do as a couple, but there are a lot there, the Bay Area and actually the United States in general, there's a lot of luck in like how accessible our world is actually here. Really, I think so my husband's injury happened when he was 20. So that's 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And really, I think the biggest effect on our relationship is it's something that like he deals with like using a wheelchair every day, right? There's something that comes up that's not awesome. And we all have to deal with all the things that we have. And I think really if there's anything that we deal with as a couple, it's like when that kind of stuff comes up for him and it's hard. So like when his best friend from high school comes to visit and he wants to go on a hike and we can't, right? There's like an added kind of sadness there that we talk about as a couple. So I think there's, if anything, there's just kind of an like added processing for what it is like to navigate the world in a different way than most people. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, what's true is that everybody probably has something like this, whether somebody struggles with alcoholism or somebody like has, really bad dyslexia or somebody's parents were, like this is a thing that comes up and this is a conversation that comes up in our relationship because it's something that Mickey deals with.
Completely.
But I would guess that with most, he does that with me with, my things with my dad and my family. And I think my guess is that we all do in different ways because we all have.
Point. No, it's a really, really great point because obviously it's easy to see on the surface, right? You see a couple and there's a woman walking and there's a dude in a wheelchair. It's like it's very obvious, right? Mm-hmm. But you're saying, which is really great and really important to highlight, is that we're all dealing with things that are perhaps not obvious, but present. I mean, the idea of, like you said, somebody who's alcoholic or a workaholic or somebody who has like a bipolar or is ADHD or those kinds of things and how to manage that relationship in a way that works. And it's because at the end of the day, you're doing it as a team, because the last thing, you'd hope that anybody would be doing would be going through that alone. Right. But to be able to have a partner, I mean, like my wife and there's no accident that I married my wife in the sense of on a subconscious level, perhaps, I don't think I said, I'm going to go marry her because she'll help me stop drinking. It It was more like I knew that she was solid. I knew that she was responsible. I knew that she knew how to take care of her own shite or keep her side of the street clean. You know, I was present to that. I knew that it was probably a good idea that I should be doing the same thing. And that I hadn't yet, to the degree that I knew I was capable of.
Right.
And so she's, my partner in crime in that regard, or my partner in recovery, should I say.
Yeah. Yeah. At one point, my therapist said something like, another habit is going to therapy every month. It was every week to start, and now it's done every month. But she said at one point, like, there's a reason you picked Mickey, and there's a reason you picked a guy who uses a wheelchair too. And I haven't totally unpacked that specifically. But there's reasons, and I think.
Yeah. Well, I really do. I do believe that. I believe that we choose people in our lives, consciously or unconsciously, to work things out.
Right.
And ultimately, hopefully, to improve, to grow, to expand, ideally, right? And you're hopefully choosing people, because unfortunately there's people who we choose unconsciously who are horribly limiting and disempowering also in our lives. And hopefully we grow out of those people sooner than later. But yeah, I mean, I think we get to a point where you can kind of come to terms with, if you're on a path of growth and expansion, that likely you're going to surround yourself with people who are supporting you in that endeavor.
Right.
So yeah, I'm very interested to hear now, actually, what you unpack with your conscious or subconscious reason for choosing Mickey in your life. That is interesting, because it comes with its own bag of tricks.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think, I don't.
And just like any couple comes with its own bag of tricks.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think we had talked about, I don't know, Mickey, I remember, like, this is maybe like our third date. He had said something like, people like me and are interested in me. And he was talking about, I think in college got a lot of attention from girls. And he said something like, people think I'm wise because I use a chair. And when I was younger, there was totally like, oh, this person like has like the meaning of life figured out because they've dealt with trauma.
He's totally enlightened. And so, yes.
Yeah, that was definitely an early thing, but I wouldn't say that's why we got married. I mean, one thing is like being able to, because, Mickey does have a visible, because his his challenge in life is more visible than it might be with other folks.
Right.
I do think that, like, I love being part of that journey for him, even though it sucks sometimes too. It makes life feel a little bit more rich, and like we're being more real with each other, to be honest, because there's a lot of things that suck. It's not that I don't think I like have something to gain from his hardship. And I do feel like we deal with like little hard things every day that like help us connect and that allow us to connect and, in a very real way. Yeah.
I think it causes you to grow. Because you're choosing to, right? I mean, you could leave, but you're choosing to stay, participate, be present. And the sum of that is having an expanded growth experience.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. But that it takes something. It takes something. But again, I mean, it's such a great thing that I'm happy that we were able to to be able to identify that just because it's obvious, the challenge doesn't mean we don't all have challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's many layers.
I'm sure he's got other crazy things that aren't the chair that you have to work with. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I'm sure you bring some stuff to the table too that he's got to work with.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Right.
But that's great. Well, I think we've covered a lot of bases here, Brittany.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have too.
We've covered a lot of bases. Before I do jump off, I ask a lot of the guests if there's books, and obviously yours is, kind of a different conversation around books. But as far as content that people readily recommend to people, whether it's like, oh, I just saw this new documentary, and it's phenomenal. I'm telling everybody about it. Like one of my guests said, I just watched Minimalism on Netflix and it was like amazing. Wow. Right. Or somebody tells me about a book like blah, blah, blah. Right.
Right.
So is there any content on there. I mean, I guess free of littlefeminist.com, which is obvious.
Yeah. Yes, our picture books will change everybody's life, adults included.
Excellent.
And let's see, it's on our shelf now looking at me. I do enjoy Mark Manson, who wrote the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Awesome. I've heard of that. Yes.
Have you?
My brother just recommended that to me.
Yeah. My husband couldn't get through it. It frustrated him. But I enjoyed it because he's a little bit more blunt in his self-help. And then two, authors that I can't get enough of. One is Brené Brown.
Oh yeah. Daring Greatly.
Yeah. All of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yes. Yes.
She's gold.
You reading the Anne Lamott?
Yeah, I am now. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
but it's been more recent.
My wife turned me on to her, and
Which one would you recommend for me? What's the first Anne Lamott book to read?
Well, the first one I read was Operating Instructions.
Okay.
So, it was about her first son, her first child.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think before birth and after birth, it's been a while since I read the book, to be quite honest. But we were about to have our first child. Yeah. And I remember flying to Hawaii and reading the book on the plane and literally having a hard time containing my laughter. You're in a capsule with 150 other people or whatever, and you're trying to maintain some decorum, and I'm laughing out loud, uncontrollably. And I had to contain myself. So I'm a big fan of her honesty. Mm-hmm. Her, just the way she deliberately delivers and authentically kind of raw delivery of content. Mm-hmm. It's right up my alley. So yeah, yes, I would say that was a really funny book. But
and is there and my last one would be Pema Chodron. Do you know her?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. That's the other author that can do no wrong in my mind.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brittany. I appreciate your giving me the time today, and good luck with the company and keep me posted. And my daughters did get the books. Cool. And are gonna.
They're a little old, but they like
the magnifying. They like the nature scavenger hunt.
Cool
idea. So I think they're gonna attack that this week perhaps. But again, so thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, you too, Jordan. Have a really good rest of the week too. And bye.
Today's episode is sponsored by Audible.com and Amazon Fresh. Check out those promotional giveaways on the front page of my website. Stay tuned for more episodes of Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy. Check out my website at breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com. Stay connected on Instagram at Breakthroughs with Jordan and Twitter at Jordan D. Murphy. And if you have a great story to share, as I'm sure many of you do, go to my website at breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com and shoot me an abbreviated version of your story to my email. I'll give it a read and maybe share a couple of them on the show.